on, Prince Philip took aim and bam. The WWF, at its founding in 1961, took under its wing, in particular, the African elephant, the African rhino, the Indian rhino, the panda, and a few others. Now, the African elephant was, had a population of about 3 million when the World Wildlife Fund was founded. Today, it's several hundred thousand. The African rhino had a population of 100,000. Today, it is virtually extinct in the wild. The last living rhino herd in the wild, 700 rhinos, was destroyed by the WWF. It was slaughtered when they paid for it, and the ones that weren't slaughtered were drugged and were sent off to game farms in Australia, the United States, and elsewhere among Prince Philip's cronies in the 1001 Club. That's why there's no rhinos left in the wild to speak of, because Prince Philip and his gang killed them all.
When it comes to blood sports, it's an all-in-the-family affair, like father, like son, like grandson. On a trip to Kenya, Africa, Prince William took lessons in spearing African wildlife from a Maasai tribal member. According to a Fox News report, Prince William drove a 7-foot-long spear into a small antelope and killed it. Prince William recently purchased 250 birds, pheasants, ducks, and partridges, not as pets, but as shooting targets. As the birds were set free, William shot them out of the sky like skeet at the Queen's Sandringham estate. Prince William and Daddy Charles set packs of bloodhounds after foxes in Highgrove. It's jolly good fun chasing after terrorized foxes on horseback and watching the bloodhounds tear them to shreds. The World Wildlife Fund was not created to save endangered wildlife species. On the contrary, it has made a fortune from the illegal ivory trade which it was supposed to prevent. Philip and Bernhard's World Wildlife Fund raised massive funds from corporations and public donations. They used the funds to confiscate huge tracts of land all over the world. The fund is being used as a land and power grab. The royal family's green policies have pushed native people off their ancient lands, shut down their farming, and caused food shortages and starvation. Saving animals and the environment is the phony excuse they use to pass international laws that advance their world government agenda. Prince Philip's son Charles is now the new president of the World Wildlife Fund, which has been renamed Worldwide Fund for Nature. It is one of the largest contributors to human and animal depopulation. The so-called conservation parks in Africa and elsewhere are covertly used to train terrorist groups and mercenaries. These paid mercenaries cross borders, start civil wars, and commit genocide in places like Rwanda and Kenya. Sadly, the trusting public have donated millions under the false illusion that they are supporting wildlife. 10 to 12 corporations run the world's food supply, which are grouped around Britain's Royal House of Windsor. The Windsor-led cartel includes Cargill, Continental, Monsanto, and Archer Daniels Midland, which dominate world grain, meat, dairy, edible oils and fats, fruits, vegetables, sugar, and spices. This cartel is hoarding food, minerals, and raw materials, and it has the power to shut down food production and export supplies worldwide.
A point on the environmental movement in general, a question for any of the environmentalists, so-called, in the panel there. Prince Philip was one of the key founders of the Green Movement. He said that if he were to be reincarnated, he'd want to be reincarnated into a deadly virus to solve the overpopulation problem. Well, the point is that the Green Movement was founded by those in the eugenics movement. This is Hitler, Nazi race science, and this will destroy Africa. Can anyone make a comment?
Prince Philip Mountbatten, alias Battenberg, and the power elite view themselves as inheritors of the earth. Culling the population through eugenics is their answer to freeing up planet Earth's resources that are being consumed by what they consider racially inferior commoners and useless eaters.
The best things in life are free, but you can give them to the birds and bees. I want money. That's what I want.
Queen is the wealthiest person on earth. Her gold carriage alone is made of 4 tons of solid gold, worth over $370 billion at today's gold prices. Until 1992, the Queen's income was all tax-free. In 1977, the Bank of England Nominees Limited was established to hide the Queen's investments. Secrecy about her wealth protects her from a public lynching. Government and banking officials inform the Queen about where to invest her wealth. That's called insider trading, and it's illegal. But the Queen gets away with it scot-free. Why? Because she's the Queen, and she's immune to prosecution. The Queen owns more than 300 residences, including castles and palaces, crown jewels, over 27,000 masterpieces, prize racehorses, and a fleet of Bentleys and Rolls-Royces. Her colossal wealth also includes crown land and investments that she inherited from her black nobility ancestors. The Queen's Crown estate includes over 50% of the UK's coastline, as well as Regent Street and Windsor Great Park. Her trillions in wealth are passed down to her descendants, untaxed. Would British tourism collapse if the monarchy was abolished? No, statistically, Buckingham Palace doesn't even make the top 20 list of tourist attractions. When the Queen's parasitical income from British taxpayers was reduced, she pretended to share the suffering of commoners from austerity programs. That drop in taxpayer income was a teeny-tiny drop in the royal bucket.
Those of you who have heard of the Bilderbergers might have heard the fact when Prince Philip actually said that he wants to get rid of 85% of the population. He said that if it doesn't happen in his lifetime, he wants to come back as a virus and do the job himself. Nice. He wants to get rid of these he called useless food eaters. Well, I'm telling you firsthand, they're the bloody useless food eaters. They couldn't put a nail in a piece of wood or fry an egg to save their lives.
Yeah!
Do you know how much the Queen is worth? 17 trillion pounds. That's $30 trillion. She could end world hunger and poverty tomorrow. Instead, she just sits in her ivory tower and laughs at us. This is coming to an end.
$30 trillion? Of the billions of families on planet Earth, how did this one family manage to collect and hoard most of the world's wealth over the centuries? Besides insider trading and tax-free income, the answer is the slave trade and drug trade. Author Nick Hazelwood traces the slave trade to Queen Elizabeth I, who sent Captain John Hawkins to collect human slaves using any means necessary. Queen Elizabeth I started the British slave trade in 1564. As head of the Church of England, her slave trading of African blacks upset the moral foundations of the church. Queen Elizabeth II is now head of the Church of England. 200 years after the slave trade was abolished, the Church was pressured into confessing its horrific crimes and apologizing for profiting from the African slave trade. At first, the Queen and the Church only admitted to owning slaves and plantations, but the public soon discovered that the Church had given their blessing to something far worse. The Church had approved the beating, mutilation, rape, kidnapping, and murder of tens of millions of Africans by declaring that Africans had no soul. This gave the Church a divine license to profit from their diabolical crimes. Queen Elizabeth I was Britain's first slave trader and the head of the Church of England. Today, The public is demanding that Queen Elizabeth II remove Queen Elizabeth I from the crypt in Westminster Abbey. Even more lucrative than Queen Elizabeth's slave trade was Queen Victoria's drug trade. Opium was grown and manufactured in the British-owned opium factories of British India. China banned the importation of opium, but once the British monarch secured a drug trade monopoly, over 17,000 illegal chests of opium worth millions were forced onto the Chinese population. The British waged 3 drug wars on China to force them to pay for the illegally imported opium. China's emperor didn't stand a chance against the British East India Company gunboats and Royal Navy. The British destroyed, plundered, looted, and raped their way along the coast of China until there was nothing left to loot or plunder. On August 29, 1842, the Treaty of Nanking forced the Chinese government to pay £15 million to the British merchants to open up its ports to opium trade and to cede Hong Kong to the British. This was the ugly origin of Hong Kong's 155 years as a stolen British Crown colony.
There are people who believe that they have a God-given right to rule over others. They believe that their outward appearance is superior to all others. They harbor selfish ambitions to be rich and to have power over what they describe as common people. They lie, cheat, steal, strangle, stab and slash their way to power. They believe that their actual willpower, what the British occultist Aleister Crowley described as the will of Thelema, the royal will, must be obeyed. Literally millions of people have been slaughtered at the behest of the royal lust for war, and thousands of people have been assassinated so that demonic dukes and killer queens can reign supreme. This cabal of crowned killers use the global network of secret societies, loosely described as the Illuminati, to do their bidding and killing. The conspiratorial view of history is the correct view of history. Conspiracy to grab property, conspiracy to make illegal profits, and conspiracy to assassinate has been the driving force behind the royal political elite for thousands of years. For the crowned killers of Europe, torture, disemboweling, hanging, burning, strangling, poisoning, and killing in the most satanic manner is the order of the day. This is the modus operandi of royal families. For centuries, the royal elite have devised terrible punishments for anyone accused of treason. The monarchy reserved the most disgusting forms of torture and death for those who questioned the royal will. A so-called traitor would often have each arm and leg tied to 4 horses, which were whipped to gallop in opposite directions, thus ripping the victim into 4 parts, whilst still alive. Often, the royal elite would divide the victim's heart into sections and send these for public display to different parts